were slightly winded for different reasons. Zabuza and Kushimaru also took this time to regroup with each other. Zabuza had cuts on his arms and across his torso from a few close exchanges with Kakashi's kunai. Kushimaru's mask was chipped at the jawline, revealing the man's angular chin. The wind Kushina had used had blown some thread that was loose up and cut Kushimaru. The battle had taken its toll on each combatant. Kushina, seeing a new opponent, charged at the eyebrow-deficient shinobi with her fist reared back to strike. Zabuza was questioning the sanity of the red-haired woman until something told him to block the punch. Trusting his instinct, the Kiri shinobi flipped his blade and blocked Kushina's chakra-enhanced strike with the flat side of his executioner's blade. Zabuza felt the impact being absorbed by his forearms and felt that his blade would crack when it started to show small spider webs like cracks. However, the blade was crafted well enough to avoid being shattered, but another few strikes like that would surely destroy the blade. That was just ridiculous. If I let the blade take any more hits like that one, I won't be able to fix the blade with blood. That only works when there is a piece of the weapon connected to the handle. Pieces on the ground just won't do. Zabuza ranted in his mind as he grunted, swinging his blade at Kushina, forcing her to retreat momentarily. Creating 3 Mizubunshin, Zabuza gave them silent orders to attack Kushina in a triangular formation. Zabuza watched on as his 3 water clones each converged on Kushina simultaneously with their replicas of the executioner's blade, rose overhead and ready to strike. Water release. Spinning water. Just before the Zabuza clones could carve into her flesh, Kushina began to spin in a clockwise motion with her hand open. Not a moment later, small specks of water spun with her, steadily growing until the water formed a dome that was spinning and compact. The water quickly swallowed up the clones and they would be assaulted. The water continued to rotate violently until it dispersed, revealing a glaring Kushina. Thank goodness that Hitomi-chan taught me the basic principles of the Kaiten before she passed on. Kushina thought with a sense of relief as she pulled a few kunai from the holster on her thigh and coated them with water. CHMTM. Falling threads. Kakashi watched as the black wire-like thread from the Nabari fell towards him with great speed while covering a great area. Kakashi went through signs with his hands and suddenly a small concentrated ball of fire spewed out from under his mask and at the incoming threading. Unfortunately, the ball of fire could not burn through the chakra-enhanced thread, which led to the scarecrow shinobi being sliced by the wires. Kushimaru let out a high-pitched giggle, seeing the shocked look in the eyes of the Sharingan shinobi. Kushimaru's celebration was cut short as he received a strong shock. Surprised, Kushimaru looked to see an electrical current traveling down the metal thread, showing that Kakashi was actually a lightning clone. Raiten Cage Bunshin. Kushimaru thought in surprise and clenched teeth, the electrical current affecting his slender body. The strong current was making each of his muscles contract, temporarily paralyzing the blonde shinobi. Kakashi, who was sticking to the underside of the bridge until his clone was destroyed. Kakashi, not wanting to waste any time, gripped his wrist and started forming his personal assassination, the lightning bolt cutter, Rikiri. Walking up to the immobile man, Kakashi brought his arm back and thrusted the lightning bolt cutter forward towards the man's heart. Just before Kakashi could kill the shinobi, Kakashi had to leap back as the Nabari cut just under his Sharingan eye. Kakashi wiped the blood from under his eye as he looked at Kushimaru, who was giggling like a crazy man. Kakashi saw a thread tied around his wrist and that the sewing needle was coming out of the bridge. Kakashi pieced together that he must have grounded the current and thus was allowed to move. Kakashi felt another presence appear next to him to see a slightly bleeding and winded Kushina. Zabuza joined Kushimaru, repairing his blade with his own blood as Kushimaru cut the thread around his wrist with a Nabari. The battle had taken its toll on each of the Jounin. The 4 Jounin-level shinobi each looked over at the dome of ice mirrors with different expressions. Narumi, Naomi and Sasuke were each looking at a different mirror of ice, but the sight was the same, a girl dressed as a hunter nin. The Leaf Genin could not keep up with the speed Haku showcased by transferring mirrors. Each of the Leaf shinobi tried to hit the Kiri Hyoten user with their ninja tools with no success. They decided to leave Sakura out to protect Azuna since she couldn't provide much in the way of help. Naomi tried to make a break to escape the dome of mirrors so she could attack from the outside of the structure. Haku quickly transported to the mirror closest to Naomi and punched the fellow Kunoichi in the gut before tossing her back to the other genin of Team 7. There is no escape from Konoha shinobi. I do not wish to kill you, so I request that you hand over the bridge builder and you will leave with your lives. The feminine voice seemed to come from each direction, only making the threat all the more real. Sasuke was mentally questioning how this girl was stronger than he was in a cha. He silently wondered how things would change if he had awakened his Sharingan. Narumi and Naomi were wondering if they could destroy the mirrors and break through the dome. The 3 genin shared the same thought unknowingly and acted simultaneously, facing opposite directions. High release. Grand fireball. Water release. Water javelin. Wind release. Dancing blades. In came the shouts of Sasuke, Narumi, and Naomi as they launched off their respective hopes to eliminate one of the mirrors trapping them. Sasuke's fireball merely melted the corners of the mirror he targeted. Narumi's javelin consisting of water buried itself into the mirror across from her, but instead of the mirror shattering the javelin fell apart. The 10 wind blades cut the mirror Naomi targeted, but the cuts were just superficial. The Konoha genin could not believe that the damage was minimal at best. More so Sasuke since he was to have melted the creation of ice. Those levels of attacks will not break my ice. I am sorry that I have to do this, but it is my mission and I can't fail Zabuza-sama. Haku released a pulse of chakra into her technique, spreading it to the mirrors. The chakra given to each mirror instantly repaired the damage, leaving the mirrors appearing as if they were brand new. Haku went to the mirror positioned above the leaf genins' heads and pulled out 10 needles coating them in ice. Crossing her arms over her chest holding a needle between each knuckle, took aim at the clueless Team 7. Hey Emo, I need you to provide the fire and I will use my wind to power it up. Got it. Naomi demanded of the Uchiha glaring at one of the many reflections of Haku. Sasuke grunted slightly annoyed by the emo remark but decided it was best to focus on the threat before his eyes. Sasuke nodded and moved next to Naomi as Narumi stood behind the two, waiting for their collaboration attack to start. Haku, who was overhead, had no intentions to let this happen because a wind-enhanced fire would surely melt one of her mirrors. Ice needles of death. The 10 needles were quickly launched at the genin from above and before they could react more frozen were launched at them from the left. Turning to the left Sasuke, Narumi and Naomi were assaulted by more frozen needles from behind, this continued for the following minutes. The 3 genin were bleeding from cuts on their arms and legs, with more needles sticking from them like a pincushion. It was thanks to the Kyuubi chakra that Narumi and Naomi were still conscious however Sasuke was not as lucky. Just when it seemed that the Namikaze Uzumaki girls were about to be defeated, a large explosion drew the attention of all on the bridge. Prior to the explosion, "You're good." That was the simple statement Naruto used as he locked his blade, Twilight, against Chijiro's much larger Hiramekure. Both teams were sweating lightly since their battle up to this point was nothing but a duel of swords. Chijiro was in the worst condition however, due to the effort it took to wield the Hiramekure. Both swordsmen had small lacerations marking their clothing, but only a few of the cuts actually drew blood. Naruto eased up on his blade, causing the unsuspecting Kiri shinobi to stumble forward, leaving him open. Naruto took advantage and lashed out with a powerful kick to the gut. Chijiro tumbled to the ground from the force of the kick. Naruto stood there silently waiting for Chijiro to stand up since he had no desire to kill someone who could test his skills in the future. Thanks, you are pretty skilled yourself Shinobi-san. Chijiro replied, wiping some blood that was dripping from the corner of his mouth. Chijiro's blade flared to life with chakra as he swung the blade at Naruto who didn't have time to avoid it and had to stop it with Twilight. The blue glow from the Hiramekure was only inches from the bang of black hair over Naruto's eye and inching closer. Soon the force was too much for Naruto to take and Naruto was launched backwards into a railing. Groaning Naruto shook the feelings back into his arm and shakily readied himself once more. He is incredible. He has managed to keep up with me to this point in swordsmanship and I am one of the 7 swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. Can I win? Just when it seemed as if the blue-haired boy's confidence was going to falter, an image of a beautiful woman with red hair and a charming smile filled his mind. With his resolve strengthened Chijiro lifted his blade up again and tried cutting Naruto down, missing by the narrowest of margins cutting through the rail. Naruto, sensing his opponent becoming more confident through his concise actions, moved back to the center of the bridge behind the other battles. He has gotten a lot more aggressive and energetic. What happened? Naruto asked himself to avoid sword strikes from Chijiro backpedaling. Naruto suddenly saw Chijiro preparing something and quickly tensed himself. SMTM Nim. Hiramekure hammer. Naruto watched as Chijiro's blade changed from a twinsword into a bulkier much wider shape to fit what Chijiro was trying to do. The chakra started off as a light blue and constantly grew until the chakra became dense and heavy. It was clear that holding that much chakra was physically taxing as the sweat poured from Chijiro's forehead. Chijiro with a war cry swung his sword down, propelling the thick wall of chakra down on his black-haired opponent. The sight of a huge wave of chakra would have unnerved any genin, fortunately Naruto was already preparing for something along those lines. Hami no Kanyumai. Crossing dimensions. Naruto who was preparing his move ever since Chijiro's blade had started to change its shape to what it was currently, Naruto acted quickly by slashing the air twice. The first time the slash left an arc of red energy floating in front of Naruto, the second slash left an arc of clear energy. The first slash felt incredibly hot as it started to compact itself into an orb, as the second slash did the same with a light humming. This technique used Naruto's elemental chakra and compacted them making their destructive qualities much more concentrated. The white orb and the fiery red orb slammed into the chakra wall and the result was instantaneous. Boom, the wind orb compressed and created a small vacuum sphere and the fiery red orb and combustion to the attack. Chijiro's wall of energy was also very volatile, so the result was rather impressive. A small blast of fire which no one on the bridge saw. Each battle on the bridge came to an end and they all stared at the large cloud of smoke surrounding the point of contact. Everyone stood silent as they waited to see who would step out of the smoke if anyone did. It took a few tense minutes for the smoke to clear away and reveal Naruto and Chijiro to the others. Both were on one knee using their respective blades to keep them up. Both boys' clothes were burned in various places from their proximity to the explosion. No one moved or said a word, then a sound broke the eerie silence. Clapping. Chapter 4. New players enter the game. That was the sound that pervaded the silent bridge, the sound of hands being brought together over and over. Naruto didn't bother turning his head to take in the view the rest of the shinobi on the bridge had. Naruto's empty blue eyes could see the surprise in the eyes of the Kiri team and the confusion in the Leafs. Naruto could feel a large group of people coming closer to his back, but then they stopped a few feet short of his position. The raven-haired shinobi knew that whatever was behind him was something that was an unexpected variable to this situation. The two shinobi teams regrouped with their comrades, all of them aside from Naruto who was still relaxed in his spot. Zabuza looked downright furious as the killer intent rolled off of his muscular frame in spades. The potency of which unnerved both Haku and Chijiro as Kushimaru was looking on while twirling his sewing needle. What is the meaning of this? Zabuza demanded, staring murderously at a short man dressed in a pinstripe suit with a really shabby cane in hand. This man was the shipping magnate Gato, who had been creating a number of monopolies in maritime trading. The suited midget was surrounded by hundreds of thugs, each wearing a smug grin on their faces. Well, I realize that I am paying you Kiri shinobi way too much for the results you are giving me, especially when the demon of the hidden mist comes back licking his wounds after a small skirmish. So I hired these fine gentlemen to finish you off after your battle, saving me quite the lump sum of cash. Gato said smugly, his nasally voice grinded against the ears of the shinobi, reminding them of nails on a chalkboard. The horde of thugs chuckled at the look of rage on Zabuza's face, believing their superior numbers would win them this battle. Before Zabuza could retort, a random thug spoke up from the front of the group. Hey guys, let's hurry up and kill these idiots and take those women and have some fun. The thug exclaimed, eyeing Kushina, Narumi, Naomi and Haku lustfully. This exclamation got a round of agreeing opinions from the other men. Kushina snarled at the men as Haku, Narumi and Naomi squirmed uncomfortably. No one took note of how Naruto's eyebrow twitched after hearing the scum's words. Naruto may not have liked his family one bit, however there were a few things that he hated even more, and that was rapists along with bigots. They spread unnecessary hate in the world, corrupting it with their animalistic behavior. Gato took one of his hands off of his cane and held his hand up in the air, silencing the chatter coming from his hired goons. No one could see where his beady eyes were looking behind his sunglasses. Tapping his cane on the bridge, Gato gazed at Naruto's back with a frown, obviously not pleased that the boy had not even acknowledged him. First I want you to kill the brat. Gato ordered his labor force, pointing his cane at Naruto who just stood up. Team 7, minus Sasuke and Sakura, were ready to jump in, and Zabuza and Haku looked ready to kill the slime ball themselves. You are nothing but a group of the blind being led by the blind. For your ignorance I shall remove you from existence. Naruto's ominous statement froze everyone on the bridge dead in their tracks. Naruto looked over at the shinobi who were watching him carefully as he hoisted Twilight up into the air, the metal glowing gray. Naruto quickly spun on his heels and slashed out diagonally, throwing a diagonal wave of gray-colored chakra with shimmers of a crimson energy embedded in the traveling slash. Each shinobi on the bridge were left wide-eyed seeing the energy slash rushing at Gato and his entourage, not believing Naruto could perform such a feat. Kami no, severance from the material world. The wave of gray and flickering crimson energy traveled through the mass of people, and the sight was not pretty on the eyes. Due to the angle of the attack, the cuts were not clean through at the waist. Some of the men were missing arms and were cut diagonally, creating two triangular shapes that when put together would make a whole piece. The one happening that really stuck out was the explosion of blood that shot into the atmosphere. The blood fell like rain over that section of the bridge, a truly awe-inspiring yet gruesome sight. The other genin all felt the need to empty their stomachs, while Kushina and Kakashi looked indifferent to the scene of mass slaughter. Zabuza and Kushimaru, who had his mask on, were smiling because it reminded them of the bloody mist period in their village. Naruto put Twilight back on the small of his back, the charm floating from its chain as Naruto walked through the piles of random body pieces that were severed from his attack. So I was not seeing things when that crimson energy mixed with my chakra during my spar back in Konoha. I suppose I am subconsciously channeling minuscule amounts of the Kyuubi's chakra into my techniques. Naruto mused, walking through the field of gore, stopping at the severed skull of the shipping magnate. With his glasses shattered, Naruto could see the look of shock plastered on Gato's face just before he died. Shaking his head, Naruto kicked the man's head off the bridge and into the roaring waves below. Naruto walked towards the other end of the bridge, where his team was looking at him with awe, or at least the genin were. Naruto walked past the Kiri team to get to them and saw the Kunoichi looking at him like he was a riddle yet to be solved. As Naruto got even closer, Haku blushed faintly when she got a clear look at Naruto's face, which she thought to be handsome. Naruto saw the blush since Haku had taken off her mask but made no comment. As Naruto passed her, he whispered something that changed Haku's entire opinion on the young man. Evil like that has no place in this world. Haku found herself nodding without even knowing she was doing it. Naruto simply stood next to Tazuna with his eyes closed and without saying a word to his temporary team. Tazuna meanwhile was staring at Naruto with a tremendous amount of respect because with one swing he had freed Nami no Kuni from its tyranny. Tazuna came to the conclusion that the Great Naruto Bridge would be a wonderful name for the bridge. Kakashi stepped forward to meet Zabuza in the middle ground between the two teams. The two A-rank shinobi stared at each other wearily before Kakashi gave an eye smile and Zabuza a smirk. Zabuza stuck his hand out for a handshake. It was fun battling with you, Kakashi Haddock. However, since our employer went back on the contract and is dead, we have no reason to continue fighting each other. Zabuza said, shaking the Scarecrow shinobi's hand. It was a thrill for Zabuza to cross paths with someone so skilled. Zabuza knew he was a battle-thirsty man and had no problems admitting it to himself or anyone for that matter. Kakashi, who shook the man's hand, was glad that the fight was over since he wouldn't call the battle fun. He just wanted to go home and rest from this C-A-rank mission. Kakashi, we aren't letting them go, are we? They are our enemies, we need to finish what we started. Sasuke voiced his opinion on the matter, still seething over his defeat at the hands of the ice-released Kunoichi. Sakura, who usually sided with the power-hungry Uchiha, did not agree with his sentiment this time. She was glad that all the fighting was over and had no desire to rekindle the conflict. The Namikaze Uzumaki girls were just wondering how this was going to play out. Naruto opted to stand silently next to the bridge builder, letting Sasuke's ignorance speak for itself. No, Sasuke, they are not our enemies, not anymore. They simply accepted a mission just like we accepted the mission to protect Azuna-san. Now that their mission has been voided, we no longer have any problems with Kiri. It was Kushina who explained the situation to Sasuke, who looked none too pleased with the explanation given. Though that does not mean we are on friendly terms with the Hidden Mist. It seems that reports that the rebel forces had acquired the Seven Swordsmen's help in the civil war were true. If they are accepting missions, then that must mean the war is over, and that means there will be a lot of animosity between the Leaf and Must because we did not aid them. We were lucky we ran into Zabuza and not someone more interested in politics. Kakashi nodded his head, agreeing with Kushina's assessment of the situation the two teams of shinobi found themselves in. After returning the handshake, Team 7, Naruto and Tazuna walked back towards Tazuna's home, leaving the Kiri shinobi to walk in the opposite direction. It took the following week for repairs to be made to the pre-existing infrastructure of the bridge, as well as the completion of the bridge. During that week, Naruto made sure to keep himself as scarce as possible, as to avoid the conversations his so-called family would no doubt wish for. However, it was not something he wished to have, it would be useless. Team 7 and Naruto stood at the end of the now completed bridge, facing down the citizens of Nami no Kuni. The mood was festive, and with good reason, because years of tyranny under the oppressive rule of Geto had finally come to an end. Naruto, who was standing on the mainland, watched on as his team conversed with Tazuna and his family. Seeing the talks coming to an end, Naruto turned around and began the walk towards Konoha without saying a word. Naruto did not feel the need to say anything, he was not their hero, and he had no desire to be either, but he couldn't shake the weird feeling that it was too late for that. Team 7, realizing that Naruto had already gone on ahead, hurried on to close the distance. "Father, what are we going to name the bridge?" Tsunami asked her father after watching Team 7 and Naruto fade from her vision. The rest of the citizens leaned in, also wanting to know what the name of the bridge that would return their home to prosperity would be. "We are going to name it after the kid who saved this country with a single slash of his sword. We will call it the Great Naruto Bridge." Naruto was sitting on the railing right outside of his small apartment inside of the red light district, enjoying the peace of the village when it was quiet. The sun was setting and the people were getting ready to retire and have dinner with their families. From this perspective, Naruto was truly reminded of what the village was. The village hidden in the leaves was a beautiful place that just so happened to have terrible people living in it. However, that was a necessary evil for the village to maintain itself. Naruto reached behind him and angled twilight in a way so it would reflect the orange rays of light from the setting sun. This world is equal parts shadows and light, and this village is no different. Naruto found that his apartment was one of the nicest places in the village, and it was located in the heart of the red light district. Their apartment was abandoned for reasons Naruto cared not to know, and it was in complete disarray, but a few ceiling arrays solved that. Apparently no one wanted the apartment complex, and that was fine. It was thanks to that Naruto could find peace here. Naruto would have taken to watching the village from atop the Hokage monument, but he found it to be too close to the Namikaze compound, so that was immediately off his list. Naruto sighed softly, closing his eyes, allowing the orange glow of the falling sun to bathe his seated form. The man must have picked up on this because as soon as he had Naruto's eye he was ready to speak. Hokage Sama requests that you visit him at the Namikaze compound. Even though he said the request, Naruto knew that it wasn't a request, this was an order from his cage. All I need to do is think of his home, and the man requires my presence. I swear Kami you must take some sick pleasure in seeing me in misery. Naruto mentally addressed the deity of creation with a narrowed glance at the sky. Naruto stood on the railing and glanced over his shoulder to see that the Anbu operative had already taken his leave. Naruto closed his eyes, and his body soon broke into a number of crows that flew towards the Hokage monument. It only took a few moments for the crows to converge on the head of Hiruzen Sarutobi and Naruto to form. Naruto took his time walking through the woods that provided the natural cover for what he once called home. Naruto walked through the forest with his hands inside of the pockets of his gray zipped-up vest and hood over his head, creating a shadow over his face. Naruto saw the gate to the compound was already open, no doubt for his arrival. Naruto walked down the path and could see that the front door was open, and there was some talking he heard from inside. Naruto was only a few steps from having to face the unfortunate music when he heard a loud snort coming from his mind. Naruto just realized that the Kyuubi had been silent during the whole time in Wave after their connection was made. Hello Kyuubi. Kyuubi's eyes slowly opened up hearing his pseudo-container's voice for the first time. This told him that the connection they had created was successful and fully operational. The Kyuubi could feel the contempt rolling off of Naruto in waves and was curious as to why. It only took the Kyuubi a few moments to realize why since he picked up the signature of that despicable man who sealed him away again. What is going on? Why are we here, Ninjin? The Kyuubi just waking up was in no mood for the foolish human pleasantries and wanted to know what was happening. Naruto let out the quietest of sighs as he walked up the steps to his one-time home, listening as the voices got louder and clearer. That man has requested my presence here as the Hokage, so I have no choice. It seems like they are trying to bring me back into the family. The fools. It looks like you will get a free show Kyuubi, enjoy. Naruto went silent and walked into the house taking a few steps. Naruto was greeted by Minato and Kushina sitting on one couch with Kakashi standing behind their couch. Naomi and Narumi were also sitting on a couch looking at him hopefully. Naruto almost drowned when he realized that Jiraiya and Tsunade had positioned themselves behind him. Jiraiya of the Sannin was the fabled Toad Sage of Mount Miyabakizan, a man whose name alone was to strike fear into the enemies of Konoha and respect in the hearts of Konoha shinobi. He was one of the reasons Konoha was always one step ahead of the other hidden villages, him and his extensive spy network. He was also renowned as a teacher since his student had become the most powerful shinobi in this era. The other figure behind him was Tsunade, also a member of the Sannin. She was a legendary medic as well as a kunoichi who had saved many lives during the wars and the current head of the hospital in Konoha. Both of these people were supposed to act as his godparents but shirked on their responsibilities. Hello Naruto. It was Minato that spoke first trying to break the tension that had flooded the room from Naruto's arrival. Any conversation that was being had was immediately quelled when Naruto entered the compound and replaced by a silent intensity. Naruto's body language gave nothing away as he stared at Minato since he had spoken. He was ignoring the sad expressions on the faces of his so-called family. He was asked by Minato to let him do the speaking. Minato's sad smile grew a bit more seeing how his son was looking at him like nothing more than a stranger. Kushina being the more blunt and exuberant of the two could not take the silence anymore and blurted out the reason for Naruto's presence. Naru-kun, please come live with us so that we can become a family again. Naruto turned his head to look at the red-haired Uzumaki, who had just uttered a desperate plea. Naruto saw how the expressions of his family lifted, probably from the thought of returning to a family. Naruto remained stoic and brought his arms over his chest, one blue eye hidden by his black hair and the other boring into Kushina with a cold intensity. Naruto did not even need to think about how he was going to respond to his mother's question because the answer was clear as can be to him. No. Everyone in the room stared at Naruto with different expressions on their faces, but they didn't expect a one-word answer. Any hope that the family was feeling was instantly squashed under Naruto's blank, emotionless tone. Naruto could feel the two Sannin behind him frowning deeply at his words but did not care. To Naruto, no one in the building at the moment had any significant value to him. Naruto felt a sudden wave of killer intent coming from behind him and saw Jiraiya move to stand by Kakashi looking quite pale. It didn't take a genius to figure out where it was coming from. Behind Naruto stood a very angry female Senju who was trying her best to restrain herself from making Naruto a stain at the end of her fist. The brat in front of her had a family practically begging him to come back home and he said no. Tsunade thought about how lucky Naruto had it. After losing her brother and lover in war, she was denied that chance by death, but he had a chance and said no. Listen here brat, you are going to come back and live with Minato and Kushina-chan, and then you are going to give your mother a hug. Stop acting like a spoiled brat and do the right thing and live with your family. Naruto closed his eyes and took a few calming breaths, lest he let his Sharingan activate from the sheer intensity of the anger he was feeling. The Kyuubi could feel the amount of contempt that Naruto had whenever he was said to be related to what was considered the perfect family. Calming himself, Naruto opened his eyes and looked straight ahead seemingly out of nowhere. Family. The family is a group of people who love you no matter what you have done. They love you no matter what faults you may have and will always be there to protect you. That is something these people in front of me did not do. They did the opposite and threw me to the scorned wolves of Konoha who sought revenge for the lives the Kyuubi took. Night after night I was abused and spat on. Day after day I was ignored and punished by those two for seeking the attention they lavished their princesses with. Naruto almost spat out his entire speech, not bothering to glance back at Tsunade. Are you telling me to do the right thing, Tsunade? Which of you were doing the right thing when the fox hunts were tearing through the streets of Konoha? My own blood ignored my pleas for help. My godparents were too busy keeping the village who were trying to kill me on a daily basis alive and well. That is the reason I curse this blood flowing through my veins, because every single day I am reminded that I am related to such trash. The only reason I am not insane is thanks to the few people who listened to a young boy screaming for help and lent a hand instead of plugging their ears and walking away like you all did. Only a few times had Naruto let his emotions slip during the truthful rant he rattled off. Kushina, Naomi and Narumi were openly weeping at what Naruto was saying. Minato, Jiraiya and Kakashi were frowning soberly since they knew Naruto was not lying. Tsunade was still livid with the disrespectful brat who she thought was just using that as an excuse. Now, Naruto surely could forgive Minato-sama and Kushina-sama for overlooking you like they did. They had a lot of things they had to deal with and were doing the best they could. You still had a home and food to come to. They still cared. Kakashi tried to help Naruto see reason and hopefully bring Naruto back since he too wanted to train who was supposed to be like a little brother to him. Kakashi was not even reading his Icha book, showing just how serious the situation was. Naruto's cold blue eyes stared holes through Kakashi with a silent intensity. Yes, there was something more important than their son. I always thought a father was supposed to protect their son, while mothers were supposed to shower them with love. I received none of that, not from them. It is funny this is coming from you of all people, Scarecrow. Was it not your saying that in the ninja world, those who break the rules are trash? That's true, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Well, you all abandoned me. Naruto turned to look at Narumi who was looking at him with a forced smile and watery eyes. On the day I chose to make my life better was the day of our birth, yet I had no importance on that day. I left and no one noticed until they found the letter I left in my room. There was one person who made an effort even if it was late. Naruto reached behind him and pulled out Twilight and held it so that the ornament that consisted of two that crossed over each other at their tips was lying on his palm for all to see. The one kunai on the left was a pure white, while the kunai on the right was a jet black. Under the kunai was a red Uzumaki swirl that was connected to the loops on the kunai handles. The initials UN were etched into the Uzumaki swirl in black and white to match the above. This is the reason I will talk with Narumi in public or on missions, however, she is the only one. The only one who had proven to be truly remorseful before my disappearance. This doesn't mean we are family, but this means we are something. Naruto himself wasn't sure what they could be or if they would be anything. He needed to get out of this place now and needed time to think. Turning around after fastening Twilight back in place, Naruto took a step towards Tsunade, who was still in front of the door when he felt someone gripping his shoulder. Naruto, this is my fault. It was thanks to me that your parents neglected you all, so we could help nurture the savior of the world. The toads have told me of a prophecy long ago, and I thought it was one of your sisters who was to be the savior, yet the prophecy has changed. The toads have told me of a prophecy of a man Jiraiya was cut off as Naruto brushed his hand off of the shoulder and turned around with his eyes closed. I can see just fine with these eyes of mine, Toad, and it shows me the brutal truth that we as humans hide behind. Naruto said ominously with his eyes shut, very telling of what he was thinking of the shinobi world. Kyuubi, can you channel your chakra to my eyes just enough to alter them? Naruto calmly requested his tenant. The Kyuubi did as he asked, and Naruto opened his eyes showing the blue eyes red and slit, much like the Kyuubi's own. Jiraiya winced at the sight and released Naruto's shoulder. Naruto turned to see the stubborn female Senju still in his way. Minato, who saw the anger in the bestial eyes of his son, frowned at his own failure to be a father. Vowing to himself to try and make amends with Naruto at any opportunity if only so he could maybe call Naruto a friend at least, that was his hope. Minato saw Tsunade still in Naruto's path and hardened his blue eyes to match what Naruto would normally look like. Tsunade stands down. Minato ordered the Senju, who looked at him definitely clearly not happy with the order, her eyes glancing over to Kushina, who was giving her the same look as Minato. I said stand down now. Minato repeated himself, flaring his chakra to put an immense pressure directly on Tsunade, who began to sweat lightly. It was just a reminder why Minato Namikaze was even more feared than the Sannin. Relenting, Tsunade moved aside and Naruto walked out of the house without saying a word to anyone. Everyone in the room had their own thoughts about what had just happened. The Namikaze, Uzumaki family and Kakashi all saw that there was a flicker of hope for a united family. Jiraiya was pondering how Naruto referenced his eyes during their brief interaction, and that reaffirmed his belief that the prophecy spoke of Naruto. Tsunade was slowly calming down, but had a clear distaste for the eldest son of the family. Meanwhile, the Kyuubi was thinking about what just happened between his container and his family. Why did I give him my chakra so freely back there? Even if it wasn't for power's sake, I still gave it away. Why? HMPH, I did it to see the fear in those ninjas' faces at the sight of my eyes. That's why. Even unknown to the powerful chakra beast, he had something akin to respect for the scorned child of the Hokage. It was something the Kyuubi had never felt before since the Sage of Six Paths and had forgotten what it was, but it was there. It had been a handful of months since Naruto had returned to the village hidden in the leaves, and Naruto made himself as busy as possible. Naruto had accomplished an impressive number of D-rank missions during that time. The easiest was when he was assigned to capture the demon cat Tora, who had just jumped into Naruto's arms and got comfortable when he had approached. He had done this mission a number of times, and apparently the cat had taken a liking to Naruto, not that he minded all that much. Naruto had realized that animals just naturally drifted to him when he was called to the Inuzuka compound to assist Hana with taking care of the sick or injured ninja hounds. All the pups seemed to react to Naruto's presence. It was like the animals could see right through Naruto's outer cold facade to the warmth underneath. Naruto, since he did not have a team, usually had to take the C-rank missions with the other genin teams, which were unique experiences to say the least. Naruto was assigned to Team 8 to travel to the land of Tea to deliver a message. The delivery was not a problem, but once they got to their destination they found out some unexpected news. Apparently a group of bandits had been terrorizing the countryside and requested their help. Team 8 agreed to help people in need, and Naruto just didn't care one way or the other. He was no hero. Just a shinobi. Naruto was able to gather some information on each genin member of the team led by Kurenai just by being on their team. Kiba was the second in line to become heir to the Inuzuka, second to Hana. The boy was brash, headstrong, and had a tendency to overestimate his own ability while underestimating his opponent's ability. His entire fighting style revolved around partnering with his ninja hound Akamaru, with no skill shown towards elemental ninjutsu. Hinata was the Hyuga heiress who was the opposite of Kiba. She was meek and very reserved. Though Naruto was able to deduce that she had a crush on Naomi, which made Naruto's lips curl into a smile thinking of Naomi and a fangirl. Hinata too relied on her clan. Shino was the Aburam clan heir who too showed no talent for elemental ninjutsu like his teammates, however Shino did think much like a shinobi should, he was calm and tactical. Naruto worked with Team 10 on a simple herb and medical supply gathering mission on the request of Tsunade. The mission went on without a hitch, but that proved to be a curse in disguise for Naruto. With all of the time they had while searching, Ino took it upon herself to get to know Naruto better. This of course consisted of flirting with Naruto, who Ino found handsome, which Naruto found annoying to say the least. When Shikamaru mentioned Sasuke, Ino would snap at the lazy Nara, saying how she would always love her Sasuke-kun. Naruto knew that if he was ever to get a girlfriend, it would not be a fangirl, never. Shikamaru was one of the few people from his childhood around his age that took the time to get to know Naruto, so they were friendly enough. Shikamaru, like every Nara who seemed to ever live, was lazy but a genius. Naruto knew that when the situation called for it, Shikamaru became deadly efficient and could be counted on. Where Shikamaru was lazy and his friend and teammate, Choji, was equal parts kind and hungry. Naruto also made note that out of all of the teams he had the opportunity to work with, Team 10 had the best teamwork. Choji was the close quarters fighter, with Shikamaru switching between long range and close range, with Ino providing support. He had not worked with Team 9, however he was aware that their sensei was the least noble green beast Mido guy. By far his least favorite team to work with was Team 7 because of the terrible dynamic the team had together. Kushina and Naomi were always trying to pull him back into their family while Sasuke was trying to fight him. Then there was the worst aspect of the team was Sakura, who had the nasty habit of screeching like a banshee. It was so bad that even the Kyuubi thought it was cruel and unusual punishment to have to listen to. Naruto was walking by the main gate of Konoha when he caught a sight that intrigued the young man. A team of shinobi and their sensei were talking to the Eternal Gate guards and showing them their shinobi licenses. The team was all wearing Iwa headbands, which made Naruto wonder what was going on. Why is Iwa here? They wouldn't be caught dead here in Konoha unless there was a chance to tarnish the village. Oh. The right Mihik-sensei did tell me about the Chunin exams. Looks like I need to have another talk with the Hokage about this, since I can't miss this chance to reveal myself on the grand stage. The kunoichi who was walking at the front of the group was wearing a bright brown Iowa flak jacket with the right sleeve missing from the jacket. There was a cloth hanging over her leg which she covered with fishnet tights. The Iowa kunoichi had short black hair and pink eyes that were lacking a pupil. Trailing slightly behind the kunoichi and to the left was a rather large shinobi who was smiling dopily. His headband was over his head like a bandana where Naruto spotted black hair spiking out of. He too was dressed with an Iowa flak jacket but had a yellow scarf around his neck. To his right was another kunoichi which Naruto was the most curious about. The kunoichi was wearing a diver's helmet with a steel cage over the opening of the helmet. Naruto could see her grey eyes looking around the village walking silently behind her teammates. Naruto noticed how there were tubes going to each end of the helmet and Naruto could see a green substance going into the helmet which made him even more interested in the kunoichi. Naruto could see that she was attractive with her face and as her flak did little to hide her D-cup bust, Naruto's eyes met hers and she smiled and winked at Naruto which only confused him. Seeing the Iowa team gone in the distance Naruto let out a dreary sigh and looked up into the sky almost pleadingly. I hope you are ready to see me suffer once more, Kami. Naruto stared at the sky mentally and just then a wind blew by blowing Naruto's bang with the direction of the wind. Naruto just silently cursed the forces of nature for laughing at his plight before disappearing in a croshunshin. Minato was sitting behind his desk reading over the details for each stage of the upcoming Chunin exams and making changes where he thought there should be changes. Finishing with the first stage Minato suddenly felt a signature entering his office, followed by a swarm of crows. Minato closed up the file he was about to go over and calmly waited for his son to finish his entrance, one he experienced a number of times since his return. Minato had a feeling he knew what this was about, but he would let Naruto say what it was he wanted to say. Naruto brought his arms up over his chest and stared at Minato intently, his deep oceanic eyes boring into Minato's lighter blue eyes. A number of Anbu were squirming in the shadows from the intensity alone between the father and son. I will be short with this. I want you to enter me into the Chunin exams. Naruto started calmly looking at the Hokage stoically with a few feathers from his crows twirling around him from the breeze coming through an open window behind Minato. Minato nodded inwardly since this was just what he expected Naruto to ask him to do. I can't do that, Naruto. You're just one shinobi and you need a team to compete in these exams. Minato informed his son in the tone the Hokage would use when he was talking to a subordinate. What Naruto's file showed was a shinobi with excellent fundamentals and exceptional swordsmanship but nothing else. However, Minato was not fooled. He was sure if Naruto was to compete in the exams he would learn much more about Naruto. He just didn't know how right he was and how much he would learn. Naruto simply stared at Minato with one black eyebrow arched in idle curiosity. I am a team just like Team 7 is a team. I do not recall that there were a specific number of people required to participate and even if you are the cage of the hosting village, you have certain liberties. Naruto stated calmly, his posture not once shifting from the calm and slightly imposing stature he took. Now it was not imposing for Minato, but his son did seem to have the air of a trained warrior. Minato let a smile across his face since what Naruto was saying was indeed true, there were no number requirements. He knew Naruto would make a fantastic politician. Naruto's eyes shot to the left where the door was behind him before he turned back to look at the Hokage. It seems we will be cut short. I have given you my request and it would be in the best interest of Konoha to grant me my request. With his piece said, Naruto performed a normal body flicker and exited the Hokage's office just before the door opened up and 5 shinobi walked in. Those shinobi were the senseis of the rookie ninja of Konoha. Kushina, Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai. There was also the sensei of Team 9 Mido Guy. You all know why I have called you here today. The Chunin exams will be coming up in a few weeks, but these are no ordinary exams. This will be the 30th International Chunin exams. I know you may think that some of your teams aren't ready, but we need them in the exams, but I still need your formal approval. Minato stated, his jaw hidden behind his interlaced fingers, getting understanding nods from the jounin in front of him. It was important that Konoha put on a good showing, especially with each of the 5 great hidden villages attending these exams. In the name of Kushina Namikaze Uzumaki, I nominate Team 7 for the 30th International Chunin exams. Kakashi looked up from his little orange book, feeling the eyes in the room on him, and I smiled at his former sensei. What she said. Kakashi stated before going back to his icha getting sweat drops from his fellow jounin as well as Minato, and a rant from Guy about his hip attitude. Kurenai Yuhi nominated Team 8 for the 30th International Chunin exams. Yosh. Mido Guy nominated my most youthful Team 9 for this year's opportunity to prove one's springtime of youth. Asuma stepped out and blew out some smoke. I assume Saratobi nominated Team 8 for the 30th International Chunin exams. Minato nodded his head and leaned into his chair smiling at his wife and Jounin, obviously glad there were no arguments. Alright, you all need to go and tell your teams and convince them if they are hesitant. With a collective hi Hokage-sama, the Jounin all funneled out of the office door. Minato turned to the window where he found his sensei sitting on the window ledge looking out into the village. What do you think about Jiraiya-sensei? Should I let him take the exam alone? Minato asked his teacher, hoping for a bit of advice on the matter, although he was already leaning in one direction. I think you should let him take the exam. He sounded very confident in himself, and this is finally the chance you have been looking for to learn the extent of his abilities. Plus it wouldn't look good if your son was to not compete in a tournament of this caliber. Jiraiya said seriously as he jumped into the office and took a seat across from his former student and current cage. Minato smiled at his sensei and nodded his head, since he too was of the same mind with what could be accomplished by allowing Naruto in the exams. That is what I was thinking as well. Nico, I want you to go and inform Naruto that he will be taking the exams and inform him where he must be and by when. Minato could see Nico leaving his office and looked back at his sensei. Jiraiya-sensei, I need you to stay in the village because during the final stage of the exams the cages will be attending and I want to make sure Konoha will remain in peace. Minato said it was more of an order than a request, but nonetheless Jiraiya nodded his head in agreement. The two then went into a discussion about how best to defend the village. Naruto was walking down the streets of Konoha to get to a training ground so that he could run through a few sword stances as well as train with his clones. It had been a week since he was informed of his acceptance into the Chunin exams and there was still another 10 days until the exams were to start. Naruto knew that his foolish father would not pass up a chance to see what he was capable of. This also gave Naruto his chance to test himself against a number of different opponents who would provide different problems. Naruto did not really care about impressing anyone, but he knew a good performance would help Konoha, but he planned to win the exams regardless. While walking down the street, Naruto heard some loud commotion coming from the end of the street next to him. Naruto turned his vision to see what was going on that was causing such a ruckus in the public area. One of the causes of the noise was dark-skinned, flat-chested Kunoichi with long red hair and a sword on her back. She had a long-sleeved dress underneath a Kumo flak jacket. The other person joining her in creating all of the noise was a shinobi from Suna who was wearing a bodysuit that had cat ears. Despite being a boy, Naruto saw he was wearing makeup and had something on his back. Naruto recognized the boy they were yelling at as Konohamaru Sarutobi. There was a girl standing behind the boy wearing makeup. She had a large iron fan strapped to her back. She had a purple clothing garment that went down halfway to her thighs and her blonde hair was fashioned into 4 ponytails. Behind the Kumo Kunoichi stood 3 people, Naruto guessed it was her team. The first was a dark-skinned shinobi about Naruto's height with short, spiky white hair. He too was dressed in the Kumo flak with a sword on his back, but was looking at Konohamaru with an apologetic look while sucking on a lollipop. Next to him was a fair-skinned Kunoichi with short, straight blonde hair. She was wearing her Kumo flak around her stomach and had her outfit cut to display her sizable bust, probably to distract enemies who would fall prey to such a thing. Naruto's eyes narrowed in on the final member of the Kumo shinobi team. There was something that seemed familiar about her. She had long, straight blonde hair that was bound using rubber bands. She was wearing a black and purple blouse with short sleeves and cloud design on the left side. She had fingerless gloves with a chain of blue beads around her left hand and arm. The black shinobi pants the Kunoichi was wearing also had the cloud design going down the left leg, though Naruto really took notice of her blue, slitted eyes that were currently filled with annoyance. What is it about that Kunoichi that makes her seem so familiar to me? Like I have known her forever. Naruto questioned himself, unaware that the Kyuubi was up and listening to his container. That human carries my sister the 2 tails. That is why she seems so familiar to your senses. Naruto nodded his head and looked back at Konohamaru, who looked very frightened along with 2 other small kids who were behind him. Naruto channeled his chakra into his ears to allow him to pick up on what they were saying without walking into their field of awareness. This way he could get their intentions without any external pressure. Listen here, Kumo, the brat ran into me first, so I am the one who is going to get to teach the Konoha brat here some manners. The boy wearing the cat bodysuit told the redhead rather heatedly. Naruto could see a few veins bulging on the boy's forehead, showing just how angry he was. Tenkuro, just let it go. We don't need to go causing any trouble here in a foreign village. The boy's sister Tamari tried to get the Suna puppeteer to see reason and avoid an international incident. One Suna could not have, especially not with their only ally. Why would a boy even be wearing makeup? Don't you have any kind of masculinity inside of you, Kurohime? The red-headed Kunoichi from Kumo taunted Suna shinobi while her hand went to reach for her sword, eyeing Konohamaru. Ignoring the shout of its war paint from Kankuro, Karui's amber eyes flickered dangerously. Now then, why don't we shave off a few inches off a brat? The white-haired shinobi, Amoy, started to wave his hands around frantically trying to get Karui's attention before she attacked the boy. carry, what if you hurt the boy, then the third Hokage goes to Kumo and shows why he is the god of shinobi and kills Asama. The B-sensei attacks and kills the third Hokage, and we go to war with Konoha and the Yellow Flash. Aomoi finished taking a deep breath using his tongue to keep his loli from falling out of his mouth. This got sighs from his team and sweat drops from the Suna shinobi. Konohamaru was just scared by the sword being pointed at him. Well, I guess it is time to strike some fear into the competition and show them why they need to behave in my village. Kyuubi, will they identify me or those other two as Jinchuriki? Naruto waited for the Kyuubi to respond as he heard what he guessed was random noises the Kyuubi was making while contemplating his question. I would say that they would see the container as you since they can only sense the chakra in the person who holds the consciousness. Naruto did his single hand sign and performed a nature-less body flicker in front of Konohamaru. You know he is right. Since you two shinobi were just planning on assaulting the third's grandson and here in Konoha nonetheless. Not to mention he is only an academy student. Naruto suddenly appeared between Kankuro Kari and Konohamaru with his katana, Twilight drawn. Naruto's sudden arrival put all of the foreign nin on high alert since Naruto had only just appeared and with a weapon drawn. I wouldn't do that if I were you. It would prove fatal. Naruto added on seeing that each of 6 shinobi were ready to try and get into a fighting stance. This confused the teams from Suna and Kumo that was until they looked. Behind each of them with a katana aimed at a vital area was an equally serious shadow clone of Naruto. There was even a shadow clone looking up into a tree while leaning against the trunk, surprising the shinobi in the tree. While they were busy with the shock of being surrounded, Naruto turned back to look at Konohamaru with a small grin on his face. Oh no, why don't you and your friends get out of here while I deal with these idiots? Konohamaru's face lit up and he nodded since only one person had ever called him that, and that was Naruto, who he didn't recognize till just now. Konohamaru and his friends took off in the opposite direction, and Naruto turned back around to see another Suna shinobi was standing with the group. He had red hair and the kanji for love over his eye. My name is Gaara Sabaku. Who are you? The redhead carrying a gourd on his back asked, wondering just who this strong shinobi in front of him was. This was a sentiment shared by the other Suna genin and the Kumo nin. Naruto stared indifferently at Gaara, which made the boy's eyes narrow at Naruto since it reminded him of his childhood. Blood, I want his blood. Gaara chose to ignore his mother this time. For now at least. Maybe just who is this guy? Yujito asked her own tailed beast curiously since it seemed like he was familiar to her. I don't know kitten, but I do know he holds the Kyuubi's chakra inside of him. I believe he is suppressing it, but that is only because it is so faint. The Kyuubi grade and Kari just had to go and annoy the guy. Yujito thought as she looked at Naruto much more wearily than just moments before. Naruto looked at Gaara as his shadow clones disappeared in small clouds of smoke, letting the other shinobi minus Gaara breathe a sigh of relief. My name is Naruto and let me give you all a saying that applies during your entire stay here in Konoha. Naruto said with a fake smile on his face as he released some of his own power that weighed down on the shoulders of each of the genin. There was no malicious intent behind the pressure, it was just pressure. Each of the genin had a bead of sweat trickle down their foreheads. I know that 2 of you are Jinchurikis, so I will only say this once. A tanuki cannot play dead to avoid a kitsune, and the cat cannot scratch the fox in its den. With that Naruto vanished in another shunshin, leaving the groups minus the Jinchuriki wide-eyed. Hitten, did you feel that was just his power forcing you down? There was no sign of Kyuubi's chakra. He is quite powerful. You should take him to your hotel room and ride. Nibi's lustful purring was cut off by a blushing Yujito who was trying to hide the red in her cheeks. Nibi, I won't just take him and have sex with him. I don't even know his name or anything about him. Yujito mentally yelled at her perverted tailed beast, finally managing to push back that annoying blush on her cheeks from the mental images of Naruto and her doing unspeakable things coming from Nibi. Tamari, Kankuro, we are going to meet Baki. Gaara ordered his 2 elder siblings who compiled without hesitation. The Kumo shinobi all shared a glance and agreed it was best for them to avoid Naruto during the exams if they could help it. Then they too left to go and meet their eccentric sensei and inform him of the situation they found themselves in. Naruto was sitting on his bed in a meditative position with just his shinobi pants eyes closed as the room slowly grew dim from the lighting seals placed on the walls. Naruto was currently sitting in his mindscape having a conversation with his resident tailed beast. Tell me Kyuubi, who should I look out for? Naruto asked the large kitsune's advice on the matter since it would be foolish not to use a 1,000-plus-year-old resource. The Kyuubi, who was resting on his front 2 paws, looked at Naruto as if he was an insect but in the end relented. Nibi probably advised her container to avoid challenging me since she was always a smart one, unlike that fool the 4 tails. Anyways, if I had to guess, you would probably need to beat down that sand brat since Shukaku was always a bloodthirsty fool with an inferiority complex. The only place he could prove to be a true threat would be in the desert where he has tons of sand at his command. The Kyuubi told Naruto, who was listening intently to the Kyuubi's informative, closed his eyes and opened them up, showing his 3 Tomo Sharingan. It turns out that in the mindscape they would activate on their own, much to the Kyuubi's ire, but he eventually accepted that since Naruto proved to have no desire to control him. Alright, so then Gaara will most likely be using sand-based techniques. He will probably have the sand in that Gordy was carrying on his back. That means he has a fixed amount of sand at his command. Naruto said to himself, just for the sake of having the information in his head in case of a conflict between him and his fellow human sacrifice. Can you tell me anything about Nibi? I mean, we wouldn't want to be bested by any inferior beasts, would we? Naruto asked to play on the Kyuubi's great pride, something he shared with the Kyuubi since he did not like to appear weak either. Kyuubi's eyes narrowed at Naruto before his large mouth opened up with a very vulpine-like grin, showing his large gleaming teeth. The one tail the Kyuubi had gotten back was flickering back and forth with amusement. Of course, neither of those two is as strong as I am Ninjin. I am Kyuubi, I am the incantation of destruction. I have not done combat with Anibi in ages, since she has priorities and other things, but I do remember her affinity to fire was second only to mine. Naruto nodded his head, but it seemed like the Kyuubi had one last nugget of information to add on to this discussion. I also remember hearing when I was sealed inside of that woman that the 8 tails had become partners with a human from Kumo. It would make sense that he would have taught the girl to partner with Nibi. Shukaku wouldn't have paired with the Suna brat, so you won't have to worry about that. Kyuubi chose not to call Kushina Naruto's mother, remembering how volatile Naruto would get. And he had no wish to test Naruto's ocular prowess in his state of frown, hearing that the blonde from Kumo could possibly use her Biju's chakra to aid her, but then again Naruto had his eyes, so it might not be such a problem. Only an actual conflict would tell who would win out. Naruto slowly let his eyes open again, and instead of a sower, Naruto found himself looking into his bedroom in the house in the red light district. Naruto ran his hand through his jet black hair with a sigh. Standing up, Naruto walked to the bathroom where he started his shower and looked into the mirror over the sink. Letting his Sharingan roar to life, Naruto stared intently at his own reflection. Soon, very soon, the whole world will know just how great of an impact I can make on this world. Taking a deep breath, Naruto let his red eyes fade back to the blue eyes he was born with. Naruto took a step into the shower and let the warm water wash over his body and relax his sore muscles. Konoha always loved the look underneath the underneath, saying so I hazard to guess that would be the first or second stage of these exams. Then after that probably a survival stage to thin the numbers down a bit before a final tournament. The tournament will allow the villages to showcase their shinobi and by extension their strength. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment to relax before finishing his shower and heading off to bed. 10 more days and then I will have a whole new set of problems to deal with, but it is a necessary evil. Naruto closed his eyes and in a few minutes Naruto drifted off to sleep. Naruto was standing in front of the Hidden Leaf Academy looking at the building impassively from under his hood. Now Naruto had not attended the academy since Mihawk had come to take Naruto from Konoha the year he was to join the academy. For some reason Naruto just thought they probably taught something stupid like Konoha during times of peace, which is why none of the shinobi in the exams outside of Team 7 knew any elemental ninjutsu. Naruto shook his head since it was amazing that Konoha could remain where it was with such a weak generation of shinobi. They truly needed to pick up their training if they wanted to surpass the last generation. However, that was not Naruto's problem, his only problem, if it could be called that, were these exams. These exams brought shinobi of all kinds from different corners of the world here to Konoha to show everyone watching what they could do. Naruto could only smile with anticipation at the number of strong opponents he may be able to fight. Naruto found the talent in Konoha sorely lacking and hoped the other villages could provide genin who would pique his interest. That did not matter at the moment, however, since to get there Naruto had a few other stages to run through before then. Showtime. Chapter 5. Thinning the herd. Stages 1 and 2. Showtime. Naruto said to himself as he walked through the main entrance of the academy and looked up to see a sign posted up on the wall that pointed the Chunin hopefuls in the right direction. Naruto arched an eyebrow at the rather obvious attempt to help the contestants in the exams, but nonetheless followed the sign up the steps to the second floor. Whatever Naruto was expecting, it was not a group of people staring at a door where 2 smug-looking shinobi were standing guard. Naruto stood there at the top step silently as he listened to shinobi from various countries complain about being denied entry. Naruto immediately recognized the 2 men guarding the room labeled as 301 from the number of times he had passed their booth. Sure, they were transformed into what Naruto assumed was their younger forms, but Naruto knew that as Izumo and Katetsu, the village's eternal gate guards. Naruto watched as a genin from the leaf tried to force his way in only to be slugged in the jaw and kicked back towards his team, earning cries from the other shinobi who were getting nervous about their prospects of becoming Chunin. Naruto shook his head at the stupidity of the shinobi in front of him, if they could be called so. Are these people this stupid? I mean it is barely an E-rank genjutsu they placed over the sign above the door. That and we have only gone up one set of stairs at this point. Naruto thought incredulously as he stared at the protesting genin with a deadpan glare. Trying to save whatever brain cells he had left, Naruto forced his way through the group without saying a word and made it to the stairs to the third floor. Naruto did not spare a second glance to the converging idiots on the second floor who deserved to be eliminated from this exam. Naruto had just missed a boy with green spandex and his team entering up a stairs he had just come from. Naruto walked up to the door to the real room 301 and slid open the door and took a few steps in letting the door slide shut. A wave of killer intent immediately tried to swallow Naruto up as he walked in alone. The genin in the room thought Naruto as an easy prey to be taken in this exam, however they had no idea how wrong they could be. Naruto shrugged off the weak killer intent since he had experienced much worse while training with Itachi and Mihik. Naruto walked over to a table situated on the right side of the room. Naruto turned to his left to see a familiar group of shinobi glancing over at him with small smiles and one with indifference. Naruto recognized them as the blue-haired boy who he fought on the bridge and the fake hunter Nin as well. However, there was one Naruto did not recognize. The shinobi was wearing a black pinstripe dress shirt with a yellow tie, but Naruto could catch a glimpse of chain mesh underneath the guy's collar. The boy had blue hair much like Chijuro, but also had yellow streaks running across the blue hair. Chijuro bowed slightly, which Naruto thought was weird. Hello again, Shinobi-san, it is nice to see you once again. I am afraid I forgot to get your name the last time we crossed B-Blades. Chijuro informed Naruto with a somewhat regretful tone in his voice since Naruto had provided a wonderful duel. My name is Chijuro, by the way. Chijuro said while extending his hand out for Naruto to take in a handshake. Naruto took the handshake since he respected Chijuro's skills with the sword. Naruto told Chijuro and by proxy the rest of the Kiri genin his name in return. Since Naruto only used his first name, they were blissfully unaware of Naruto's heritage. Naruto watched with slight amusement as Haku slid over to the bench of the table Naruto was sitting at. She kept getting closer but had yet to look at the young man in the eyes, which was only fueling said young man's amusement. Haku glanced to see Chijuro and her other teammate talking, so she turned back to face Naruto with a small smile. I was thinking about what you said on the bridge all that time ago, and I agree, trash like that doesn't deserve to live. I just wanted the chance to tell you that I admire your resolve. Haku tried to blurt out that last sentence as fast as she could. Naruto couldn't help but let out a small chuckle at Haku's nervous behavior around him, which only made the ice release Kunoichi a little self-conscious. Naruto turned to face Haku with a small foxy grin. It is so nice to meet a serious Kunoichi. All of the Kunoichi around here are more interested in their looks or love life. Naruto started with a frown and a blank tone with a matching deadpan expression. Haku giggled at Naruto's deadpan expression, drawing the attention of the other two Kiri genin. Naruto just repeated what he said to Haku to the other two, getting chuckles from both Kiri shinobi, while Naruto wondered why he didn't take the chance and go to Kiri. The boy in dress clothing looked at Naruto with a grin, almost as if he could sense Naruto's strength, or maybe he was just an idiot. My name is Kakujo. The shinobi known as Kakujo introduced himself with a suave tone. Naruto wondered why he was named after the bishop piece in shogi, then again some people thought he was named after ramen topping. Then something Naruto wasn't expecting happened. Naruto watched as a hand of yellow energy came out of his hand and then he performed a small salute with the energy or aura hand. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the blatant display of Kakujo's abilities. There are only a few reasons to show your abilities so readily to an enemy shinobi. 1. He is an idiot, or 2. He is extremely cocky in his ability. Judging from the gleam in his eye when he showed the ability, it is the cocky option. What a fool it is, that arrogance that will lead to an early death or the death of those around him. Naruto shot Kakujo with a grin of his own, effectively masking what he was thinking about the Kiri shinobi. Naruto continued to have a pleasant conversation with the team from Kiri as the rest of the Konoha made their presence known in the testing room. Team 7 had just entered the testing room and were greeted by the same treatment Naruto was greeted with about 10 minutes prior. As the wave of killer intent washed over them, Naomi and Narumi showed their discomfort by clenching their hands. Sasuke felt his heartbeat pick up and Sakura tried to shield herself from the malicious intent by using Sasuke's body as a buffer. The tension was becoming too much for the Leaf Genin team and left them wishing for any kind of disturbance in the unrelenting killer intent of multiple Genin teams. Thankfully someone was feeling kind today and gave them their much needed distraction. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke groaned hearing the familiar shout from one of his most loyal fangirls and as if on cue, felt an extra weight on his left side. Praying silently for something else, Sasuke turned his gaze to the left slightly where blonde hair filled his vision. It looks like Sasuke was not having as much luck as he would like. The room watched as Ino snuggled into the Uchiha's side with growing sweat drops on the back of their heads, wondering how she became a Kunoichi. A certain Pinkette had a large twitch on her brow ridge as she watched the Yamanaka heiress cozy up with her Sasuke. Ino pig. Sakura shouted at her rival and used her abnormal natural strength to pry Ino off of Sasuke like a leech. The two-leaf kunoichi, which was a stretch, were grinding their foreheads against the others and were shooting looks that could kill if such a thing was possible. Sasuke, who was hiding his embarrassment, slid away from the fangirls. The room grew a second sweat drop and wondered if all Konoha kunoichi were fangirls. While all of this was happening, one-leaf kunoichi with a hairstyle resembling a panda was looking away in embarrassment. Haku was nodding now, completely understanding what Naruto was telling her earlier. Troublesome. It looks like you guys got roped into competing in these exams as well. Shikamaru said lazily as he and Choji, who was eating from a bag of chips, joined Team 7 and their teammate. Narumi and Naomi let out a small sigh, seeing how even in one of the most important events in the world, Shikamaru showed no enthusiasm. You know Shikamaru, I think that you might actually die if you were to show some enthusiasm. Narumi said with a small smirk, earning a snicker from her sister and a roll of the eyes from said Nara. Narumi did get a slight twitch when she heard Shikamaru mutter something about troublesome blondes. Hey, it looks like you guys are taking the exams too. Not like you are going to win, right Akamaru? Kiba said, nearly shouting in his usual brash style of doing things, earning a small yelp from his canine partner. Shino and Hinata walked up behind him in a much more subdued and quiet manner. Sasuke managed to distance himself from his arguing fangirls and smirked at the Inuzuka air. Of course we are, like I would miss a chance to beat shinobi from all over the continent, dog breath. I will also be winning this whole thing. You don't stand a chance against an Uchiha. Sasuke challenged arrogantly, serving to irritate the young Inuzuka who wanted nothing more than to wipe away the Uchiha's signature smirk. Kiba clenched his hands around the wrists of his sweater as he restrained himself from attacking the Uchiha heir who had just insulted his pride. Hinata looked at her teammate with concern since she never really liked conflict, especially when it was between comrades. Shino was just Shino. Watch it, Sasuke. It won't be like it was back in the academy, and even then you could just barely beat me. I have gotten better and your pretty little eyes just emerged, meaning you still suck. Kiba retorted with a smirk of his own as he pointed out the simple fact that Sasuke had just activated his Sharingan. Back in their academy days, Kiba was the only one who was able to challenge the Uchiha when it came down to Taijutsu practice. Sasuke glared at Kiba, letting his single Tomo Sharingan roar to life, earning a growl from the Fira-like shinobi. You know, being so loud usually puts a large target on your backs. That is something that is not recommended for anyone, but especially not for rookies. Oh, and I am Kabuto, by the way. The rookie genin all quieted down and looked over to see a boy with glasses and silver walking towards their little group. Taking heed to his word, the group of unaware genin took a look around and saw a number of shady-looking genin all glaring at their group. Hinata let out an eep and hid behind Shino, while Ino and Sakura, who had just stopped arguing, swallowed lumps forming in their throat. Sasuke shot them a glare right back and the other genin just looked around the room. Let them glare all they want, me and Akamaru are going to win this whole thing, so it doesn't matter. Isn't that